Retail arbitrage, as we knew it, is dead. And I know people have been saying this for a long time. People use that as some sort of gotcha. Like, they've been saying RA is gonna die for years. Go home, grandma. But like, it's actually true now. The way we used to do retail arbitrage is gone, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. Let's examine where it came from, where it is now, and how we ended up here. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Cosmic Heather, and I'm a full-time reseller. Roll the intro. So I have been doing RA since before it really had a name. So some people want to talk about the good old days of retail arbitrage. I was there. Fun fact, my very first sale on eBay was retail arbitrage. I worked at Toys R Us in 2006 with a flip phone that had no internet. Toys R Us had incredible clearance, like a lot of stores did during that time. And since I was stuck in the electronics section all shift, I became intimately familiar with my inventory. Some of that stuff sat there forever and collected dust. Some of it had gotten marked down and never like re-tagged. So I would occasionally take my scanner, scan through the section, and look for these hidden clearance deals. One time it was literally so crazy, I found like a bookshelf CD stereo system. Why Toys R Us was selling that kind of stuff, I don't know. It had been marked down to 50 cents. Imagine finding such a deal today. They simply don't exist. But whenever I came across a regular clearance or hidden clearance deal, or in some cases just items that had been sitting for a while at full price, I would write down their information, UPCs and all that kind of stuff, take it home, and look it up on eBay. If something was profitable, I would buy it after work. If I sold through all the inventory at my store, I would use the stock checker. I would check for other locations. I would call them saying, oh, there's a customer here who's interested in this product. Do you actually still have it? And then I would go and buy it. It worked at the time because competition was so low. Smartphones were rare, so you couldn't easily check prices on the go. And stores actually marked things down properly. Like I said, that 50-cent CD stereo system. Good luck finding such a deal today. So technically anyone could do it, but not many people did. Online selling was still kind of new to a lot of people, either finding the stuff or physically figuring out how to sell it on eBay. And if you wanted to learn, you'd have to like read a book or join a message board. The plethora of YouTube tutorials and paid mentorships just simply didn't exist. As time went on and smartphones got more popular, as did online shopping, it really changed the landscape. Suddenly, buyers could shop online 24/7, and resellers could use their phone to check arbitrage prices on the go. I was working fine with my arbitrage and thrift selling on eBay, but I wanted to know how to make it up a step into Amazon. Amazon always felt like the big leagues, and I wanted to play in the big leagues. I first looked into selling on Amazon around 2009. At the time, I was into one of my favorite retail arbitrage flips, which was selling the Coca-Cola products that were made in Cleveland, Ohio, because Cleveland had one of the last bottlers in the country that still used sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. So if you wanted Coca-Cola made with sugar, you'd either have to wait for Passover or you'd have to buy it from me on eBay, because this was pre-Mexican Coke being like widely distributed in Walmart. But I wanted a piece of Amazon's pie. Surely Amazon customers would want to buy even more of my sugar Coke, which I would just wait for one of the local grocery stores to have like a 3 or even 4 for $10 12-pack sale and load up. But the first problem I ran into was that my sugar Coke had the exact same UPC as pretty much every other Coke. And because that UPC was on the main Coke listing that Amazon was provided, I believe it was restricted. So I couldn't even get on that listing if I tried. I tried to get with support to be like, technically it's the same UPC, but it's a different product. And they really just didn't know what to do with me. So eventually I gave up because Amazon just seemed too confusing and hostile to little guys like me. Because if Amazon was already on a listing, like, good luck, you were gonna be restricted from even playing ball. Time passes, I'm still doing thrift and retail arbitrage. I source a lot of stuff from Big Lots. And I start to eye Amazon again around 2017. I was always getting really good clearance deals from Kohl's on perfume. They would clearance out all of their Mother's Day stash. They would clearance out perfumes ahead of Christmas because they would get these Christmas bundles in, and I would get them super cheap, and I wanted to sell them on Amazon. But again, I ran into the gate system because perfumes are health and beauty, and you can't sell any health and beauty unless you have an invoice and you ungate it, and you can't get an invoice unless you are a business, or at least that's how it seemed. So again, Amazon just seemed really too confusing and hostile to a small seller like me. I had a baby to care for at the time. I just put a pin in it and retreated back to eBay like I always do. This entire time I was doing retail arbitrage without actually knowing that it had a name. Basically it was buy low, sell high. Doesn't matter where it's from. It paid for my groceries and sometimes a little fun money, but I was strictly surviving. I was not thriving. And then after a car accident in 2019, which I was the passenger in, I decided no more excuses. I was going to find a way to make this work. I felt deeply that I had the makings to make this work. I created my Instagram account. My very first post on Instagram was a retail arbitrage bolo. I plugged myself into the community because I wanted to share and be shared with. I saw other sellers not only surviving, but thriving and making Amazon look easy. So I formed my LLC. Valid wholesale suppliers would finally sell to me, and Amazon would accept their invoices. In most cases, you only need 10 units of a brand to ungate them. I finally had access to the RA big leagues. Third time's the charm. COVID hits. Online shopping absolutely explodes, and I am poised to take off. And I take off. For a few months anyway. Around this time, Amazon rolls out their fair pricing policy to weed out anyone they believe is price gouging essential goods. Now, in my opinion, hairsprays and face creams are not essential goods, and I should be able to charge whatever I want for them. But usually, if you waited long enough, those price alerts would drop off and you would finally be able to list your item for the amount you wanted to list it for. For about 4 years, life was good. The ungates were simple. COVID supply chain shortages meant huge profits if you could find those products locally and put them on Amazon. RA sellers absolutely feasted during this time. But by late 2024, the price alerts had really become a nuisance. Some products were actually selling for more on eBay because Amazon would lock down the price for no reason. This was especially true on very high demand older discontinued products, you know, the stuff that had been off the market for 1 to 2 years. It's like, fine, you want me to sell those little diamonds in the rough on eBay, I will do it. But more often than not, Amazon was the preferred marketplace because you could sell items for a higher price, you could sell more of them, and you can sell through them faster. Why would you want to sell something for $30 on eBay when you can sell it for $60 on Amazon and sell twice as many in the same time frame? But at least eBay still existed as an option when Amazon didn't want to play fair. But this was the beginning of the end for the buy and hold market, which is the practice of buying a product as soon as it's discontinued in hopes that the product will increase in price and you can sell it for more later. And this was because there was no guarantee that you'd be able to sell it for more later because of the price alerts. And if you thought price alerts were bad, it got so much worse. Because in early 2025, we had what I dubbed brand apocalypse. Amazon decided to lock down access to many common brands I had already paid to ungate myself in. Amazon basically said, oh, 10 units? Too simple. How about 200 to 400 units? And if you can't provide supply chain documentation all the way back to the manufacturer, don't even try. That meant massive investments just to get every single brand back. And in many cases, 40 times more expensive. Disgusted, but determined, I decided to play along. I went back to my most trusted wholesale supplier. They've been in business a long time. They only deal with businesses, and they carried most of the brands I wanted. I invested heavily in the one brand that I really, really wanted back. I got my invoice just as I had many, many times before. I submitted it and was like, whatever, you want me to pay 30 times what I used to just to have the same brand back? I have the money. I will play ball. I give them the same invoices that I had always given them and had always worked in the past. Rejection after rejection after rejection. Yes, I highlighted and annotated. Yes, I flipped it upside down. Yes, I submitted backing documents like credit card statements and shipping to prove that I had paid for the items and received the items. Nothing I did mattered. And I was far from alone in this. You can search the Amazon seller forums for so many instances of people being like, why aren't my invoices working? And the Amazon seller forums are absolute trash if you didn't know. The people on there will just parrot, well, you need a letter of authorization. You need a letter of authorization. Okay, Amazon does not require a letter of authorization documentation, they require an invoice, but they're not taking the invoices. Amazon will just send it back to you saying, this invoice does not meet our review. Why? At this point, it was mostly just the brands on the listing or Amazon themselves. Occasionally, you'll see these big sellers with thousands of feedback. I've been on Amazon for 5 years. I don't even have 100 feedback yet because it's really hard to get feedback. So these are very large, very active accounts. And then occasionally, you'll just see some random person with 20 feedback on there. And you have to wonder, what did you do to get on there? They were like the weird exceptions and not the rule. Wholesalers became completely pointless because even the legit ones were getting completely rejected. Amazon was effectively blocking you off from the garden forever. It's back to the minor leagues, back to eBay with you, with the masses. And even if you could find a brand that was spared from brand apocalypse, Amazon loved to slap you with a price alert. And if you could get through that price alert and they would let you ship, they liked hiding it behind a message saying, oh, this product might be a little high priced, and then conveniently they'll have their options at the top that are all provided by them. You can see exactly what is supposed to be happening here. Price alerts, regating, and then rejecting invoices effectively killed retail arbitrage on Amazon for most of us little guys. But there was still one shining beacon in all of this mess. Walmart. Walmart had fewer restrictions. Walmart still suffered from price alerts, but would give you wider access to most brands. It really felt like the Wild West and what people said the early days of Amazon felt like before the gates in the first place. The velocity wasn't as good as Amazon in my experience, but at least it gave us another avenue to access those big league buyers. Until CNBC ran an expose about counterfeits on Walmart. Ahead of this story coming out, Walmart decides to kick most third-party sellers off the platform for most categories. They too would require Amazon-level invoicing all the way back to the manufacturer in order to ungate. And I believe it's also per SKU and not per brand. Now, all of this invoice nonsense is technically impossible for an RA seller to compete with because we're not buying from the wholesalers, we're buying from retail. This entire time we've been operating in this weird gray area where the platforms don't want to outright ban retail arbitrage, but they want to have these systems in place where they can cover their own behinds in case of a counterfeit issue. But Heather, why don't you just become a real retailer and get approved by the brands that way? Get in their valid supply chain, get your invoices, play the game the way it's meant to be played, duh. Because nearly every valid US-based distributor that can tie themselves back to the manufacturer restricts selling to third-party e-commerce sellers. The brands won't let them sell to Amazon sellers. So Amazon requires documentation going back to the manufacturer in order to ungate you, but the manufacturers don't let distributors sell to those e-commerce sellers. So you're in this really fun catch-22 where you're not really allowed to do anything. Amazon used to be far more forgiving about this, but not anymore. Outside of eBay, health and beauty retail arbitrage is like 90% dead. The good times are behind us. And if you're not interested in becoming a legitimate part of the supply chain as a $1 million seller usually, eBay is where you will remain. So that's where I am. Back on eBay for the most part. Some items I can still sell on Amazon or Walmart, but my sales are down literally 70% year over year. You can literally see my sales fall off a cliff when brand apocalypse happens. I don't believe this is ever going to change, and I want you to hear the truth from me. Most retail arbitrage content creators are not going to tell you this, conveniently. Why? Many run cook groups, paid bolo discords, paid coaching and mentoring, sell you lead lists that are pretty much picked over and garbage leads anyway. They have a vested interest in keeping the status quo and selling you a dream that really does not exist, at least not anymore. They love telling you that it's somehow your fault that you're failing. Oh, we got Joey Jojo from our cook group a Nike ungate with a Target invoice. Never mind the 50 other people in our group we couldn't replicate that with. They want to sell you on these great bolo lists and leads that they're not even able to make money on themselves. Oh, just keep submitting the invoice over and over and over. They'll accept it eventually. No, I'm sorry. But if an established seller like me with a business buying legitimate wholesale and has a legitimate wholesale invoice, thousands of sales per year, six-figure sellers on Amazon, cannot get Amazon to give me these brands, what hope does a newbie have? It's absolutely disgusting and sad to me that people in the community are still selling this dream. Retail arbitrage, as we knew it, is dead. If someone tells you different enthusiastically, Follow the money. You'll find the reason why. And some sellers like me do speak up, and I really do appreciate that. The more voices telling people the reality of the situation, the better. But I do have a problem with some of them bookending their rants about the platforms with, oh, and by the way, join my Q4 Christmas cook group. It's $60 a month and full of leads that newbies will absolutely not be able to take advantage of. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm still gonna side-eye you if you're trying to sell a dream that doesn't exist. And I am not immune from this. I have a Patreon. I had a Bolo group that was $5 a month, one of the cheapest in the industry. I have mostly shifted to eBay-based retail arbitrage and thrifting leads. But I was very upfront with my group about this when the switch happened. I told them there was no way the old way of doing things was sustainable anymore, and if they didn't want to be members anymore, I completely understood. I had to watch so many of my members close their Amazon stores because it just stopped working. It stopped being a viable place to sell things. Ask real sellers who are not trying to sell you something if they had their best year ever on Amazon. I doubt anyone's gonna say yes. It was not a great year for this business model. My only hope is that these platforms see how much revenue they lost by kicking so many sellers out, but my guess is they're not gonna change anything because platforms rarely roll back these levels of restrictions. So what is the root cause of all this? I think there's like a few. Counterfeiting was the main one. Brands didn't like not having complete control over their supply chain. They know there's not going to be fakes on the shelf at Walmart because they have a one-to-one relationship with Walmart and are directly supplying them. Whereas on Amazon, there might be 20 people selling the same thing and the brands have no idea who those people are or where they got their merchandise from. The second a buyer complains about an item being spoiled or fake, it ruins the brand's image and it spooks people from wanting to buy that product on Amazon. I can't really blame the brands for that. I understand and sympathize. And for a while, brands didn't even want to sell on Amazon. That incentivized RA to sort of put those products on Amazon when the brands didn't want to do the work themselves. But as Amazon grew into the behemoth it is, they could no longer ignore the marketplace. A lot of them got their own accounts to sell or went through a large company that sold on their behalf. Or in a lot of cases, partnered with Amazon just like they would with Walmart and had them sell their products. This kind of displaces the need for most retail arbitrage. The second reason I think is the rise of crime rings and fencing stolen goods. Again, brands don't like having to compete with somebody whose buy cost was zero. This is not a problem that is unique to Amazon though. The third reason is people like me making videos about retail arbitrage and showing just how much income could be generated from simply going to the grocery store and selling certain products on Amazon. Established vendors in the supply chain are usually bound by MAP agreements, minimum advertised prices, and minimum order quantities, and they don't like dealing with people like me who operate outside those fences. It's not fair to them, and you'd be crazy to think they weren't complaining about the proliferation of people like me. And because of videos like mine and from other creators, it really popularized Amazon sellers for the small guys like you and me. This brought in a ton of new and relatively inexperienced buyers to the platform, and all it takes is one bad apple to spoil the bunch. So for that, all I can do is apologize. I really wanted to bring people up the ladder with me rather than pull the ladder up after me. I just wanted to help people, but it's still a valid reason that I had to acknowledge. So I've presented my evidence that retail arbitrage as we knew it is dead. You don't have to agree. If you're killing it, that's fine. You clearly have a system that still works, and that's great. I respect that. I still find retail arbitrage deals and I can still sell stuff on Amazon and Walmart, but my sales are off a cliff. So it's not entirely dead, technically. It's just a shell of its former self. And I doubt it's ever gonna recover. And someone had to say it. I'm fine with it being me. If you know something I don't, feel free to DM me. Feel free to put it in the comments. If you have a valid way that's actually working to consistently ungate people, I'm all ears. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want more reselling content. Follow me on Instagram or Facebook for reselling content. Follow me on TikTok for general nonsense. Drop a like on this video if you agree or just liked the video. Now get out there, have fun, and find something good.